This is The Guardian.
Hello, I'm Faye Carruthers and welcome to The Guardian Women's Football Weekly. So many emotions. England are into the semi-finals of Euro 2025, but what madness did we all witness? A note, a shin pad, a shootout. How did you all experience those penalties? Behind a cushion on the sofa with expletives on a WhatsApp group, in the stadium watching between your fingers. It was a trip. And how the Falk did Jennifer and Sweden finish with the bloody nose? 2-0 up, 2 goals in 2 minutes though, taking the Lionesses into sudden death. And Sarina Wiegman's side progressed thanks to a gold star penalty from Bronze, heroics from Hampton, and despite having 4 spot kicks saved. So England have set up a semi-final against Italy, who reached the last 4 for the first time in 28 years, knocking out Norway. Captain Fantastic Cristiana Girelli's 90th minute winner sparked jubilant scenes in Geneva. We have all of that to dissect. I'm honestly not sure I can go through it all again. Plus we'll take your questions. And that's today's Guardian Women's Football Weekly. What a panel, bleary-eyed, we have today. Tom Garry, how are you?
Good morning. I'm okay. I think I can sum up how mind-boggling that all was with 2 very short examples. First of all, I just realised I'd left my jacket in the press room last night. I was so kind of spaced out. And secondly, when we do this thing as the writers at The Guardian where you're emailing in your reports where you put at the top your name and where you were. And I realised I sent in by Tom Garry in Geneva when I was actually in Zurich.
Who am I? Where am I? What am I?
Yeah, that's how mad it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, good morning. Good morning.
Can I just recommend you ASAP go and get that jacket because I have a lovely Navy Mac, RIP. It is still in Qatar somewhere. It disappeared, left pitch side. So I would suggest going and getting it as soon as you possibly can. Lost property talk here, weather talk. Tom Garry has it all. Marva, how are you feeling?
Tired. I was just on so much adrenaline last night. I just couldn't sleep after that. I just had to decompress for hours and hours. So yeah, very, very tired, but very happy.
Yeah, Sarina, who also needed to decompress. We'll get to that in a sec. Johnny Liew, you've literally just rolled out of bed. And you never look like someone who's just rolled out of bed. Good morning.
I always write like someone who's just rolled out of bed. Good morning. Yeah, I had quite a heavy one on Wednesday night, and I had a very early flight to Zurich on Thursday morning. And I just wanted a nice, simple 90 minutes. I wanted a nice, easy night, frankly. And I was failed on every count.
So this is basically your fault. You request these kind of things and they do tend to have the opposite effect. Okay, well, I mean, look, I don't even really know where to start. We'll try and go through it chronologically, but we may not entirely. But the key point is that England are Euro semi-finalists once again. It was a chaotic and bruising encounter, I think it's fair to say, against Sweden. It finished Sweden 2, England 2 after normal time, before the Lionesses then came through one of the most nonsensical, awful/brilliant penalty shootouts to win 3-2. Here are my scrawlings from the game. Shin pads, notes, Super Sarina subs, squad depth, 103 seconds, strapping, swagger. Kind of, without writing in the penalties, sums it up. And in her post-match interviews, as I said, Sarina Wiegman called it one of the hardest matches she's ever watched. She said, very emotional. We could have been out 4 or 5 times during the game. Then we go to the penalty shootout, and we miss a lot, but they miss even more, and we're through. I need to decompress, I think, which is exactly how we all feel, as Marva perfectly summed up. So, Tom, see if you can sum up that game, if possible.
Well, there's so many different things that we need to recognise. First of all, how poor England were for the first hour, and then how impressive and spirited and determined the fight back was. They just completely refused to give in. That was astonishing. How we need to recognise how well Sweden played, but also how inexplicable it is that they have not gone through. They had so many opportunities to knock England out. And spare a thought for Jennifer Falk, who has saved 4 of the first 6 penalties that she saved and is still on the losing side. Like, as a goalkeeper, that must be kind of incomprehensible to understand how you've not won the shootout when you save 4 of the first 6. And I feel so sorry for Smilla Holmberg, a young right back, 18 years of age, who has had this sort of very impressive breakthrough tournament as such a young player, did not deserve to be the player who missed the decisive penalty. And I've never seen a penalty shootout like that live. The whole night seemed just chaotic, fantastic drama. We didn't have a shootout in the last Euros 3 years ago, so maybe the whole tournament was trying to kind of make up for lost time with that kind of chaotic drama. Faye, it was extraordinary stuff. And somehow England have found a way, and they deserve so much praise for finding a way to do that in tournament football, all the way the subs all helped out, to be in a 6th consecutive major tournament semi-final. That decade has been absolutely outstanding from the Lionesses. And yeah, you can just never, ever rule them out, can you? You can never rule them out.
No, you can't at all. And actually, I think what was really important is the first thing you said. England were really poor for that first hour, because it's really easy when you look at the result to get carried away and excited as England fans and be on this, fantastic high of the roller coaster. But I have to say, it was a really poor performance. But that resilience, that squad depth, and so much work that's gone on behind the scenes has got them to the place that they are now. And as you say, they've been in every major tournament semi-final since 2015. They're the first team now in Euro history to come back from 2-0 down in the knockout stages. And you mentioned it in your piece last night, Johnny, about England's self-belief helping them overcome all the odds. How much does that mentality set them apart in these kind of moments?
I think that there are very few teams in the international game that have that quality. Obviously, the United States, one of them, and Spain, I think you could say now. But this kind of sets them apart from what their quality is on the pitch, because I think we can all agree that they're on the pitch, the fundamentals of the game were not quite there for at least for an hour. But there was something in this England side which almost expects things to turn out all right in the end, and that can be a really powerful weapon, in fact, because it infuses what you're doing with a certain sense of purpose. I think it infuses the opposition as well. The opposition know that you're England, that you have options on the bench, that you have that hallmark of quality that can change the game in a moment. And that makes oppositions quite jittery. It gives you self-belief that however lost the cause, you are going to find a way to pull yourself through in the end. And that comes through years and years of getting to the latter stages of tournaments and fighting your way through. I mean, like this was kind of reminiscent of what we saw in Australia, where they looked really bad for quite large parts of that tournament. And the Nigeria game, they found a way through. In Colombia, they found a way through, and they kind of almost whatever they had to do, they found a way of doing it. And obviously it didn't. It didn't work in the final, because they actually came up against a team that was technically superior to them. But it is, I think, going to get England to another tournament final, because they just have. England reverted to being England, and Sweden reverted to being Sweden. Sweden reverted to being the team that has fallen short basically in every major tournament, has looked very good and been very competent and qualified out of the group stage and done what's expected of them, but ultimately has not taken that final step. And I think that institutional memory is a really powerful force in sport. It kind of tells you who you are, and it also shapes what happens next.
Sweden almost became Norway. It was. I did feel sorry for them. I said it in my before. I said, "Wow, that was amazing! Congratulations, England!" in my expletives-laden WhatsApp group. I said I felt sorry for Sweden. That was my overriding emotion as an England fan. That just felt weird to say that. And actually, Lucy Bronze described it as a roller coaster, and both underwhelming and overwhelming at the same time, which I think is really, especially for a post-match interview, when you've got all that adrenaline, I thought was very insightful. And I get what she means, but Because going 2-0 down that early with some poor defending, Marva, was just awful to watch. How was your viewing experience? You're back in England now, aren't you?
I'm back in England now, yeah. And I felt like I needed, I was finally sort of getting my rest. And now after that, I'm back to where I was a few days ago in Zurich. But yeah, it was an awful watch. It was horrible. And it wasn't just a case of, when we make that mistake early on, you kind of think, okay, maybe we've just got that out of the way. It's a kind of, normally you get that out of the way, you pick yourselves up, and actually maybe that's what you need to just kind of wake yourself up and go. But if anything, we just kind of looked shell-shocked and we looked startled, and it just reminded me of the France game a lot. And yeah, like Johnny was saying as well, I just think it was kind of almost a summary of what England have been, but like writ large, in the sense of, in the lead up, I think actually post Euros win, there's been this kind of like, what are England? They kind of have looked quite fatigued. Are they just tired from so much international football? And are they actually that good in terms of how they're playing? I think particularly out of big tournament football, there hasn't been that much that's excited us fully. I think we've always been a bit worried. I think we've seen a lot of cracks start to show, and all of those cracks that we've been seeing over the last few years were so evident in that game, and were evident in that France game as well. But then they do what they've also done, which is just be an incredible tournament team and just get it done. And I remember even thinking back to kind of the Nations League and the previous Nations League, where I thought we played terribly, but we looked at it and you go, look, they're so tired. They haven't had a break. And then in the Netherlands game at Wembley, they were 2-0 down, and you thought, this is it. Like, what is this England team? And then they just score 3. And you go, this is what they can do. Like, when they kind of just turn it on, they just turn it on. And all credit to those substitutions, because it's not an easy thing to do, particularly like Esme Morgan. I think we have to shout out, because she's going to get lost in this. But that is, to come on as like a striker where it's all or nothing. Like, you've got kind of nothing to lose. You just come on, you try and score. That's one thing. But to come on at 2-0 down and have to play centre back in a team that hasn't been playing well that whole first half and beyond, massive shout out to her. But yeah, an awful watch for that first half, but just an incredible watch for the last 15 minutes.
It was a stroke of genius, actually, because they needed the height. They were being bullied in their own penalty box, and the height of Esme Morgan made a difference. And, she had a couple of wobbly moments as well, as you would expect against, a quality front line that Sweden have. But Sarina Wiegman tipped the dial yet again. So they went to 3 at the back, and then Beth Mead, Esme Morgan, Michelle Agyemang and Chloe Kelly came into the game and had an immediate impact. I think the stat going around was something like 62 or 63 minutes was all it took for Chloe Kelly to basically turn the game on its head, putting that cross in and causing all the drama with that first goal, and then 2 goals in 103 seconds. We talk a lot about the strength in depth, Johnny, but that did ultimately change the game.
I thought Lauren Hampton, worked hard. She was actually one of England's better players while she was on the pitch. But I think the way that England played through her, Sweden were really quite happy to defend that. I was looking at the crossing statistics about an hour through the game, and they nailed something like 3 crosses out of 27 or something. It was a really, really low, because obviously Sweden,
they couldn't beat that first defender, could they?
No, and even when the crosses were making it into the area, England didn't have the bodies in the box. They didn't have the height, obviously, and Sweden were just very happy to sit in the kind of the width of the penalty area and head it away all night. And Kelly, with who I think is a lot more willing to turn inside and get the kind of the diagonal cross in from the corner of the area. She's more willing to get that early cross in, and obviously with Agyemang as the kind of extra presence up alongside Russo, it was a kind of a go for broke strategy that England had to pursue, but also it provided an extra dimension that it basically asked Sweden some new questions, and that was what did it ultimately. They are. I thought Sweden have defended like brilliantly all tournament. I think they conceded, was it none in the group, 1 in the group stage, which is the fewest of any team in the tournament. They have arguably been the best defensive team in the tournament, and it did look as though England were going to really struggle to break them down. So credit, I think, to Wiegman. I think everyone during the second half was crying out, where are these substitutions? Why hasn't she changed anything? I think that the fact that she's actually managed to solve that problem is a real credit to her.
Tom, I'm going to ask you in a second a bit more about Sweden, but just quickly, Marva, obviously Lucy Bronze scored the equaliser, and we will wax lyrical about her very shortly because, wow, the experience that she showed, quite incredible. But I want to talk about a player who doesn't have very much experience in Michelle Agyemang, 19 years old, first goal at a major tournament. I mean, she just looked fearless, didn't she?
She looks incredible, and it's one thing to take your chance in that moment, but I think her overall centre forward play was massively helpful to the team. And you look at the bench, and you could say, of course, even someone like Aggie-Beever-Jones, who I think maybe a lot of people expected to come on, but I don't think that's a slight on her at all. It's more that how Agyemang plays as a kind of very sort of in-your-face centre forward. She was really leading that press from the front, and it was such intelligent play at so many points of the game. And also, actually, shout out to Russo, because there were points where I saw her really kind of directing Agyemang and where to be and kind of really press from that front. But I mean, 3 caps and 2 England goals? It's just a ridiculous stat at 19.
And one quite important one.
One quite important one. And the other one of the best goals I've ever seen for England. To do that at 19, and to do that when you weren't even meant to be in the England setup a few months ago, you were in the under-19s, just so incredible. And to be able to deliver that for your country is just amazing. And to know that we've now got her for however many years is so exciting, and she just brings something different to the other centre forwards and other strikers as well. So yeah, just so happy for her.
I thought she was brilliant defensively as well. I'll be honest, I don't know when in the game this was, because time kind of stood still and it all merged into one after that penalty shootout. But Sweden were in the ascendancy after England had equalised, and they had so much space over on the right-hand side, and all of a sudden you just see this figure sprinting across, and Michelle Agyemang was there, disrupted the cross going in, and the move broke down ultimately. And then the other thing that I noticed, did you see at one point, I mean, this is poor, by the way, but Sweden should have had a corner late in the game, and it blatantly came off of Keira Walsh. And as everybody was walking away, you see Michelle Agyemang just give this kind of look, this kind of side eye.
Yeah, maybe that's experience that she needs to work on her poker face a little bit. Don't give that away too much.
Without a doubt, I thought that was meme worthy. It was brilliant. But look, Kosovari Asllani spoke about having the perfect game plan for England, Tom, and in many ways she was right. How did they exploit the Lionesses, particularly in that first half?
Well, they had so much joy with the pace and power of Blackstenius in behind the England defence early on, and also the pressure that they put on the England back line with the pressing, which Asllani was so kind of integral to the organisation of that. Asllani, a player who's played in the second tier of English football last season as a 35-year-old, sort of played like a player in their 20s and looked like a Champions League level player again, still so intelligent, still so energetic and intense with the way she was working off the ball and kind of helped stifle Keira Walsh and Stanway in the midfield. I thought that Asllani was so good, and when she went off, Sweden was significantly weaker. We have to say that, for all we praise England substitutions, Sweden didn't have the same caliber of player coming off the bench to make that kind of impact. I was actually frustrated because it was all the things that Sweden were doing well in the first half were things that I thought England could have foreseen from watching Sweden's games. I was slightly concerned in the build-up about what the plan was for the pace of Blackstenius. And the second goal in particular, while I appreciate England lost the ball unexpectedly in that position, they were very high, the defence, given the pace of Blackstenius. It was a very risky sort of setup with a high line. But Sweden exploited it really well, and they should really have gone 3 or 4-0 up. So they tactically, Gerhardsson played a really good game from the start, and they will be waking up this morning so sort of dejected, and I think they will be so sort of confused as to how they didn't manage to win the game. Gerhardsson afterwards, of course, his last ever match in charge of the team, he was understandably in a very sad mood. He was asked what he was going to do next. He said he was going back to the hotel to watch the game all over again. So presumably he was up till 4 a.m. watching the game back in pure bewilderment at how on earth they managed to not go through an extraordinary night for Sweden, and they must think what a missed opportunity that was.
Yeah, we'll talk about Liew Williamson's potential ankle injury because it was a brutal extra time, half an hour, players dropping like flies. But we'll discuss that in a second because we've got to talk about, I can't believe we're 20 minutes into the pod and we haven't fully spoken about the penalty shootout, but we kind of had to go chronologically. I mean, look, it was awful. It really was not a good advertisement for women's football. That was my overriding after you take away the drama of it. 5 were scored, 6 were saved, 3 were missed. Johnny, producer Soph said that you were actually incredibly calm about the whole thing while everybody else around you kind of lost it. Have you ever seen anything like that in your many years in a press box?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, yeah, sometimes you get great penalty shootouts, and sometimes you get terrible ones. I remember England's men in the was it the 2006 World Cup where they went out to Portugal and Owen Hargreaves was the only one who scored. I've been at Spurs Nottingham Forest penalty shootout in the FA Cup where I think they missed all of them. I think they missed all of them. So, you know, this is what happens. It's just sometimes pressure gets the best of you.
And tiredness, actually. That it is, you know, fatigue. You're having to do the most mentally grueling part of a game in a penalty shootout when you are most fatigued. It's almost like one of those tests, isn't it? And
confusion, and you know, just being slightly overcome. You know, Chloe Kelly, who obviously took one of the penalties she scored, but she said she was bursting for a wee. Did you see this? She said afterwards, she was bursting for a wee during the penalty shootout, which might explain that slightly weird hopping run up.
No, she always does that, unless she's always desperate for a wee before that.
Yeah, and what happens is, I think once you get 1 or 2 misses, it gets into everyone's heads. So definitely, you know, we saw quite a few penalties blasted over the bar, and so maybe Grace Clinton walks up and think, okay, I'm just going to place mine, and she played, frankly, a characteristically excellent Grace Clinton pass. She just played it to the goalkeeper. And then, you know, it did descend into farce.
I literally said to my friend, she's going to leather this. She stepped up and I was like, she's going to leather this. And then it was so tame.
No, that's the class of Grace Clinton, the roll of the ball, you know, it's just playing it to feet almost.
Literally playing it to feet.
But yeah. I mean, what? But I was quite relaxed. Even when Sweden, you know, I think twice Sweden had a kick to win it. I never quite believed in them. I don't know. Maybe this is because I've just come out yesterday morning and I'm not as emotionally invested in this journey yet as a lot of the people there. But it was actually it was the same during the Champions League final where Susie obviously was kind of losing her rag in the closing second. No, Barcelona have completely wet the bed here. This is like they're done. And I had a similar feeling last night. So, you know, it was pretty hairy at times, but ultimately, you know, for reasons that I went into earlier, I did think that England would get the job done because England are just so good at just getting the job done.
Yeah, they are. They're excellent at it. Jennifer Falk, Tom, had only conceded 1 goal prior to this match. I actually meant to mention it in the pod the other day that everybody had talked about Kata Cole being the Golden Glove winner, but actually Falk had been absolutely superb. 4 penalty saves. But then she stepped up to take that all-important 5th penalty, sent it off target. I mean, they clearly didn't practice them. I love that she had, you know, the nous to stand up and do it. But was it the right decision? I mean, ultimately it wasn't. Obviously, that's a very silly question in some ways. But you know what I'm trying to say.
No, it's the right question. The 5th penalty did feel very early for the goalkeeper to be taking it when you think there were forwards still who hadn't taken one. Listen, Falk's job first and foremost is as a goalkeeper, and she made 4 fantastic saves. Well, at least 3 of them were really good saves in that shootout. And Falk and Holmberg have managed to put theirs over the bar. Eriksson's managed to hit the post, and then there was the 2 Hampton saves. So Sweden overall have missed 5 of their 7 penalties, and you can't miss that many and think you're going to get through. They had so many chances, as Johnny mentioned. They twice had a kick to win it, but they were never really convincing in their sort of conviction that they were going to score. I really want to applaud Hampton, because I think particularly the save she made from Jakobsen the second time that Sweden had a chance to win it. That was a fantastic save, low to Hampton's right, to tip it onto the post at a time when England really needed her. Hampton said something really interesting after the game about Falk taking the 5th one. She sort of said essentially that running through her mind was that was one of the only players she didn't have any stats on where she would go, because they've got all these notes on the bottles, haven't they? So she kind of could think, okay, where's this player going? But for Falk, she essentially said you had no idea where she would go, so it was all on me, was what she said. As it was, Falk went over the bar, but completely chaotic penalty shootout. The atmosphere in the stadium was one of disbelief. The reactions at both ends was great fun to see, fans just with their head in their hands, hiding behind their eyes, unable to watch. Great sporting drama. If you're going to delay the BBC News at 10, that's a good reason to delay it, right? For the nation to watch that chaos. I kind of loved it. If you could have sat and watched it while you weren't trying to file copy, you could have just soaked it all in. It just appreciated how balmy it all was. I mean, what a shootout! It's much more fun that way than when it's they score the first 4 each, and then somebody's the unfortunate player who misses in the 5th one. It kind of Sweden must be kicking themselves, because you can't save 4 penalties out of the first 6 and not go through. That's sorry, Faye, I'm running out of the words to articulate.
Sacrilege. It's terrible.
Chaos.
Yeah.
Complete chaos. And England did get away with one. And I completely agree with Johnny that once a few people start to miss, it probably gets into everybody's mind, doesn't it? And there were people who we've seen take very convincing penalties before, whether that be Greenwood, for example, who's normally so reliable from the spot. We've seen people, Mead as well, people suddenly look a completely different player stepping up to take the penalty because of those people that have missed earlier on.
Actually, I watched Philippa Angeldal step up for that first penalty for Sweden, and you could see it all over her face. She didn't believe it. Yeah, we have to talk about Hannah Hampton, Marva. I mean, bloodied and bruised by the end of it. It had very Terry Butcher-esque vibes, didn't it? With tissue or a tampon, whatever it was, up her nose throughout the end of it. Some big saves as well, it has to be said, not just in the penalty shootout, but during the game as well, to keep England in it. It's difficult to kind of ask this question, especially because of all the scrutiny she was under coming into the tournament with Mary Earps retiring. But did you feel like she maybe came of age in an England shirt in this game, or is that a bit over the top?
No, I don't think it's over the top. And I think actually probably this whole season for Chelsea was her coming of age. And I think previously I was always a little bit more I would prefer Mary Earps, just because I felt a little bit like Hannah Hampton might have a mistake in her. Whereas I think this previous season for Chelsea, she's really matured in that aspect and her decision making. And you saw it even towards the end of this game, where she was nervy. Of course she was. Everyone was. And she'd obviously made that slight error earlier in the game, which Liew Williamson corrected. But sort of towards the end, when she was nervy, rather than kind of trying anything, she was just I'm just going to kick this out of play and take the pressure off my team and take the pressure off myself. And I think actually that's the mature response to do, particularly in that moment. And yeah, like you said, she made some incredible saves. That one just before half time, if that goes in, that game is over. If it's 3-0 at half time, as much as we're saying England can turn it around and we just trust them to just get it done, I can't see them doing it at 3-0 down at half time. So yeah, she was incredible throughout. And then for your first major tournament penalty shootout, I know obviously somewhat over the bar, but still to get some saves under your belt, to dive the right way even when it did hit the post or go over, I feel like she can take that confidence now as well, and hopefully all the kind of noise beforehand in terms of is she going to be experienced enough compared to Mary Earps, I think hopefully after that she can kind of take that on board as well and go in with more confidence. But yeah, with a tampon up your nose as well, when blurred vision and your head being hit, that only adds to it.
Yeah, and talking warriors, Lucy Bronze strapping up her own leg at one point. She scored the equaliser, arguably, particularly, let's not discuss that first hour, but, afterwards, England's best player on the night, potentially, alongside Chloe Kelly. 102 kilometres per hour, that penalty past Falk, and she meant it, didn't she? She did leather it. First penalty for England as well, but stepped up when her team needed her. This is what she said post-match. I watched the goalkeeper in every single penalty and she dived quite early. And statistically in a penalty shootout, it's quite risky for the goalkeeper to stand still and go down the middle. And you're more likely to win if you go first. Winning the coin toss played into that. So yeah, I love maths, which I thought was brilliant. And I will mention, within this, in fact, after we've given the love to Lucy Bronze for her performance, I will mention in this, the work that the FA have done behind the scenes on penalties contributed to this, without a doubt. Bar the 4 terrible penalties, all the other things that had been in place were really important. But Lucy Bronze, discuss, Johnny Liew.
That was, just the penalty itself was kind of iconic, and the way she rips off her strapping as she's walking towards the penalty spot, and then just chucks it behind her, and then she leathers the ball in and grabs it, and then there's this after every penalty there's a real kind of ritual, because the goalkeeper wants to be the one who hands it to the next player, to the next taker. And Bronze grabs it and he smashes it into the ground like a wide receiver who's just scored a touchdown. And there was that real kind of simmering, seething anger almost to her all evening. Right from the moment she decides to bomb forward and take that chance and make the run to the back post, just in case she gets lucky. And I think that there is something really quite stirring. And there are certain players who just, they want to do their jobs and they want to contribute, but ultimately when it gets hot, they want to be the one who decides things, which is a really kind of a rare quality for a right back to have, and especially one who's been such a stalwart for England for so many years, who's been such a reliable player, but in those moments, yeah, I mean she was everywhere. I didn't actually think she wasn't as bad as the rest of the some of the rest of the defenders in the side in that first hour. I think that there were lots of times where sort of Williamson and Greenwood and Hampton and Carter were sort of passing it among each other, and Ron just saying, I'm in space over here, just switch it. And they don't quite have the capability to play that 40-yard ball, or they maybe didn't have the confidence. And then obviously when they went to a 3 at the back, she got released to be a lot more aggressive down that right flank, and that was the key to it, because obviously the reason why England had struggled so much during the game itself was that Sweden were basically winning the battle of the flanks. That they were putting a lot of pressure, and the fullbacks couldn't link up with the wingers in the way that England intended to, and releasing Bronze in that second half was, it was a real kind of a game-changing moment, I think, not just tactically, but in terms of changing the whole feel of the game and the belief that England could do it.
Yeah, just a word about Sweden, Tom. It was a really, really sad end to Peter Gerhardsen's tenure, and presumably as well some of his playing squad also. I wonder whether he slept last night. Marva said the adrenaline was going, but I mean, he was probably having nightmares about not having done a practice penalty session. They were so on the cusp, and former Matilda's manager Tony Gustafsson's going to be taking over the reins when he steps down. So where does Sweden go from here?
Yeah, that he was crestfallen, Gerhardsen. He said he was going to go back to the hotel and watch the game again, which sounded like torture, probably like a glutton for punishment to endure it all again. And he essentially said he was asked a few times like what next, and he just sort of couldn't look any further ahead than just how disappointed he was. Look, Sweden is still going to be a strong force. This isn't like the end of an era, but there will be some players who, surely Asllani won't still be in the core of that team, for much longer, just from a natural age. Probably maybe another tournament for Eriksson, maybe 2. Vaccinius will still keep going, but it's not like it's the end of an era. They've still got good young players coming through, as we've seen with Holmberg. They've got players like Benison. They've got a lot more years left in Angeldal. There will still be a strong side. It's going to be hard for them to look back on the last decade and understand how they've not won a trophy, like how close they've been. Think about the silver medals in 2 Olympic Games, consistently in semi-finals and the knockout stages, and I think third in 3 of the last 4 World Cups, which when you consider that their men's team have failed to qualify for 3 of the last 4 World Cups, the contrast is in their performance is incredible, and they deserve such praise for how they've done. But they'll come back from this. The improvement they've made from 2022 is stark, and I think they'll improve again. Looking forward to seeing how they get on in the next tournament. But they will be kicking themselves because you won't get many better opportunities. They knocked out the holders in the World Cup in Australia and New Zealand when they knocked out the USA on penalties, and they've gone within a whisker of knocking out the holders here. So they go home probably with a huge amount of praise, but just they'll be so bewildered and crestfallen as to how they've not gone through. So it's going to take a little while to pick themselves up.
Yeah, bewildered is the right word. And actually, some of the Lionesses players, it was quite interesting watching the celebrations. The younger players in particular all ran over to celebrate. And some of the older players, Alex Greenwood, Kira Walsh, just stood there kind of shell-shocked in tears. Lucy Bronze very calm. It was really interesting seeing the range of emotions as that awful penalty was missed by Sweden. Just to round this up, we received an email from Jim Hearson. Dear Susie Faye et al., good luck analysing that game. Hopefully we gave it a good shot, Jim. It was absolutely something else, not necessarily in a good way as well. Abject first half, frustrating second, those 2 minutes, and possibly the worst penalty shootout on record. But it was enough. I'm going to try to be positive. Chloe Kelly changed the game. Absolutely. I don't feel like we've given her enough praise, actually. Lauren James did it all, including superb defensive work, and we've got the real Lucy Bronze back. No idea what's going to happen against Italy, but you certainly can't call the Lionesses boring, can you? No, Jim, you cannot. Right, that's it for part 1. In part 2, we'll have a look at the other quarter-final as Italy saw off Norway in Geneva. Welcome back to part 2 of the Guardian Women's Football Weekly. So, a little bit of catching up to do again. The quarterfinals started on Wednesday night. Norway and Italy came face to face in Geneva, and ultimately it was Italy who booked their spot in a European Championship semi-final for the first time since 1997. It finished Norway 1, Italy 2, thanks to a 90th minute winner from Cristiana Girelli, her second of the match after a leveller from Arda Hegerberg. Jubilant scenes in Geneva in front of obviously a partisan crowd. You were there, Tom. What did you make of the game as a whole?
Well, Italy thoroughly deserved to win. I was so pleased to see them win because they were the better team, and it was such a lovely story as well. Italy, they've been a really nice story in this tournament. The support for them is growing. The atmosphere in Geneva from their fans was just really heartwarming, and they've got a technically really good midfield. Severini, Caruso, Cantore all played very good games against Norway, and then Girelli, sort of the veteran striker with the 2 goals in the right place at the right time for both of them, is such a deserving player to be the heroine. After the longevity of service she's given the national team. She was really emotional in the press conference afterwards. You could tell how much it meant to them, and I thought that they were the better team. Norway desperately disappointing. They did have a good spell in the second half when they looked like the stronger side for about 25 minutes, and you thought they were going to do it. But overall, no, they can have no complaints. Italy deserved it. And my only minor concern for Italy now is that the way they were speaking afterwards was as if sort of that was their final, that they'd done it. Like they've made the semi-final. We've made a first semi-final since the 1990s for Italian women's football. And the tone of it was almost like that. We've done it. This is incredible. So that might work in their favour if they go into the semi-final as a bit of a free hit with no pressure. But the tone was quite different. There's a risk almost that they feel as though like, wow, like we've achieved everything we wanted to achieve now. Whereas they're good enough to keep going. Like the way they've been playing, they can cause England problems. So sort of coming at it from a neutral perspective, I sort of hope that they don't approach the semi-final as being like job done, which was sort of the slight tone of the post-match. They've got a lot to offer in the semi-final with the quality of the football that they played in midfield, with particularly with the quality that we saw from Caruso and Cantore. They're a very good team.
Yeah, they are. And, Cristiana Girelli, Marva, 35 years old, 12 years with the national team, finished the season as Serie A top scorer with Juventus. She just kind of epitomises the Italians, doesn't she? How key was she?
Oh, so key. She could have had that one in the first half, but then particularly that second one to head her across goal, I just thought was such good movement. Lots of question as to why Guru Reiten was marking her in the back post, because why have you got the player who scored, I think, the most headed goals across sort of all 5 leagues domestically being marked by a very small forward player? That just doesn't make sense. But that's a topic in a little bit when we go on to Norway. But yeah, I thought Girelli was brilliant. All throughout the tournament, she's been brilliant. She's led the line where she's needed. We brought it up in the preview pod as well in terms of what to look for in Italy, and I was particularly looking at Italy myself and saying that headers, free kicks, set pieces, but also just their physicality and kind of how organised they are, but then how direct they are. And I think what's really impressed me this tournament is that they've gone beyond that. It hasn't just been, an organised team defensively who have then got this great striker who've taken their chances. I think how they've grown into this tournament and pushed in terms of their wing play, their physicality all over the pitch. I thought against Spain, they were brilliant. Like, I know they lost 3-1, and I know it wasn't Spain's full first team, but even so, I've seen many teams come up against Spain and do so much worse. And they were really, really giving it to Spain, even in terms of individual battles, physicality wise. I was really impressed with them. And then also just that thing of just like, they know what they're good at. They know they're not going to be, passing it around and passing teams off the pitch. But I thought against Spain was a perfect example of how they did that, of just playing that ball through. When you don't have Girelli, you've got strikers like Piemonte, who can do a very kind of similar job and just wear defenders out. So, yeah, I agree with Tom. I think they could give England a difficult game, because I think where they've also been growing is in not just sitting back and being defensively solid, it's how they've grown in their press. And I think you saw that against Norway. When they actually stood up and pressed Norway, they caused them problems. And actually where England have really struggled is when teams have been pressing them and not when they've just been in a low block, which is kind of opposite to what England was struggling with before. So I also just think there's a blueprint there on how to hurt England, and what Italy have. If they apply it well, I think they could cause some problems. And if I wasn't a big England fan, I'd be excited to see kind of what they do.
Yeah, your dark horses that you didn't think were going to get out the group.
My dark horses. I said they'd cause some teams some problems. Did. I just didn't know how many problems.
You did. Norway remain a conundrum, Johnny. Marva mentioned there. Guru Reiten starting at left back. I just still don't understand it. And they were passive for large portions of the game, just one shot on target registered as well. Blame obviously goes towards the manager and will be put at Gemma Granger's door, but we also have to remember that this is not the first time Norway have underachieved on a big stage. Where do they go from here, do you think?
Yeah, it's the eternal conundrum, isn't it? And I think something that has baffled quite a lot of fans who obviously are familiar with the star players and wonder how, a team with such rich individual talent keeps falling short. And, we saw this at the last Euros. We've seen this at actually, consecutive major tournaments. And in a way, Guro Reiten at left back almost encapsulates the issue, where you are trying to fit in so much individual talent that you end up unbalancing the team. And I think over the years, it's been increasingly hard to see an identity in how Norway play. You know how Spain are going to play. You know how Sweden are going to play. There is a blueprint there. Italy have a very defined style these days. Very, very kind of tactically rich and based on quick transitions and I don't know. I don't. If I watch Norway, I don't know how they expect to score apart from maybe give it to Arga and see if she does something with it. There is that element where they have not looked like a team for quite a few years. That they've switched between different formations, they've switched between different coaches, and I think what really needs to happen now is almost the sort of reckoning that the men's team needed, because from their kind of 90s peak, they really slipped down the ladder, and they basically needed to build that team up again from the bottom with very possibly a new pool of talent, a fresh tranche of new players and a defined identity, a team that's built around the team rather than giving it to the big individual players and hoping that they come up with something.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good point. We've said right from the beginning of our preview of the Euros, how do you solve a problem like Norway? And they haven't managed to do it again. Let's look ahead to Tuesday's semi-final in Geneva, where England will face Italy for a place in the final. We've mentioned it a few times, and we are going to do a proper preview on Sunday when we look back at the other two semi-finals. What are you most looking forward to, Tom, about it? Hopefully not stressful as the quarterfinal.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing whether or not Italy can have the sort of impact in the midfield technically that they have had in their other games, against an England midfield that we know if England are afforded space and time, Walsh will dictate the game and England will be very, very strong. If Italy can stop that happening and get on the ball themselves, and do what they did to Norway and also to Belgium and Portugal, then we could be in for a fascinating game. There'll be a few things at play here. Italy have had 24 hours extra rest. They won't have to travel. They've been in Geneva already. But you would still, we shouldn't forget that England will go into it as the heavy favourites. Like they have got so much more experience with these semi-finals now in their sixth semi-final in a row. I think the atmosphere will be fantastic in that stadium. It's really close to the pitch, unlike Zurich, where it's sort of you're behind this atmosphere sapping athletics track. It's a good tight ground to the stadium. I think it'll be a really good night. But England now will go into it with incredible belief that no matter how badly they might start, they'll still be able to find a way. That it will be a huge opportunity for both of these sides to get to a final, a massive opportunity because of the way that things have opened up with Spain and France and Germany on the other half. So a big night, a really big night.
Yeah, for sure. Concerns, though, Marva, around Leah Williamson, forced off with an ankle injury. It was a nasty role. She played on and then ultimately had to come off. She didn't look particularly comfortable in the post-match interviews. I suppose it's just a lot of work for the medical team to get her fit and ready.
Yeah, and it's not just her either. I mean, you looked at the whole team by the end of the game, and there was bleeding out of one nose and cuts on another face and a black eye still from Lauren James and Lucy Bronze taping up her leg. And you just sort of thought, even if we get through, how many players can we even field against Italy at this point? But obviously, yeah, if Leah Williamson's out for the semis and final, if we do get through, that is a huge blow, because not only is it your captain, but that level of experience at centre-back, while I say, Esme Morgan came on and did brilliantly, you would have to shift around that back four a lot. And if you're already looking at the performance of Jess Carter in that game and thinking, is she going to start next game? That's a lot of shifting about to do, and you don't want to be having to do that in a semi-final and possibly a final. So hopefully she's okay. But yeah, even the way she was responding in the post-match interviews, it didn't seem positive. And hopefully she was just being cautious. But I think we're going to see a change in that back line.
Johnny, you know how terrible our predictions are, so I'm leaving it to you. Myself, Tom and Marva, as well as Susie, Soph, so many pod regulars get it wrong all the time. So it is down to you, Johnny Liew. How do you see this game panning out?
England will be fine. England will be absolutely fine. I mean, I agree with Tom. I was watching the celebrations, the Italy celebrations the other night, and I'm thinking that's a team that's going to lose the semi-final. And whoever it's against, to be honest, which is not to downplay Italy's achievement. It's I think it's huge for Italian football that they have reached this stage. I think it'll project women's football in Italy to an audience that I think has possibly been quite skeptical of it. I think Italy still has a lot more barriers to hurdle in that respect. But yeah, I think they've played their final, and England have not yet played theirs. And as much as I see how Italy can theoretically hurt England, I don't see how they can live with them for 90 minutes.
Could end up being a do-over if France can beat Spain. Could be a little bookend. France-England in the final, which would be fascinating. Right, the Women's Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco has reached the quarter-final stage this weekend. 11-time WAFCON champions Nigeria face Zambia on Saturday in a rematch of the third-place playoff in 2022. Nigeria top Group B, 2 wins and a draw, but they didn't concede a goal. Zambia, though, finished level on 7 points with hosts and 2022 runners-up Morocco in Group A, but ended up finishing second on goals scored. And the hosts are favourites going into Friday's last 8 clash against Mali, who progressed as one of the two best third-place teams. Morocco are the joint highest scorers in the tournament, 7 goals for them so far. Jelaine Shabak scored 4 of them. Tonight as well, Ghana face Algeria. They've also not conceded a goal yet this tournament, but they have only scored 1 as well, so I'm not expecting that to be a high-scoring game. Finally, the defending champions South Africa take on another third-place qualifier in Senegal in Rabat. That should be, on paper, straightforward for the Banyana, but Senegal, of course, carry a huge goal threat in Nguena and Dai, so they could be looking to upset the odds. We'll keep you up to date with what's going on over in Morocco, and some domestic news to wrap up for you as well. Olivia Smith has become the first £1 million signing in Barclays WSL history after joining Arsenal from Liverpool. That is now confirmed. I know we spoke about it on the pod the other day. Aston Villa have signed Netherlands midfielder Jill Byings on a permanent deal for an undisclosed fee. She's joining from Bayern Munich, having spent last season on loan at Villa. Their third signing, of course, of the summer after the arrivals of defender Lynn Vilms and goalkeeper Ellie Roebuck. 1 in, 1 out as well, or actually 2 out, more out with Villa. But the WSL's record appearance maker Jordan Nobbs has joined WSL 2 side Newcastle United after being released by Villa, and more departures from the Midlands club with confirmation. Casey Robinson has joined Everton on loan. They have the option to buy as well. Right, I mean, we got through a lot there. I feel utterly exhausted, not quite as exhausted as I did after that penalty shootout. But Johnny, lovely to see you as always.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, bye. Go back to bed.
Yeah, I think I will.
Marva, take care. See you soon.
See you soon.
Tom, please get some rest.
I'm off to find my jacket, Faye. Yeah, have a great day. See you soon.
Excellent. I hope I'm keeping all my fingers crossed for you. Right, we'll be back on Sunday to review the last 2 quarterfinals and look ahead to the semis. Keep having your say. Send in your questions via social media or email us at womensfootballweekly@theguardian.com. And as ever, a reminder to sign up for our bi-weekly women's football newsletter. All you need to do is search Moving the Goalposts Sign Up. The Guardian Women's Football Weekly is produced by Sophie Downey and Silas Gray. Music composition was by Laura Iredale. Our executive producer is Sal Ahmad.
This is The Guardian.